I'm not a big Lord of the Rings guy. I watched the original 3 movies as a kid, and I thought they were pretty good. And I think at one point, maybe about 10 years ago, Dave and I sat down and watched the extended editions of all 3 movies in one day. And while that was, an interesting experience, I don't think I'd ever do that again. I tried to watch the first Hobbit movie, and it was okay, but not enough for me to go back for the second and third ones. I never saw those cartoon versions, though the clips of them on YouTube are pretty funny.
That Gollum? That thing who had Mr. Bilbo's ring? He's been following us since Moria, I think.
My precious, more hasteless speed.
And when I was really young, I rented the Super Nintendo game. The worst $3 I ever spent. My interaction with the Lord of the Rings fandom in the past few years, therefore, has been peripheral, and only through the wider "Are Orcs racist?" conversation that has been permeating the internet. Now, I know that conversation is primarily about tabletop gaming, and to a lesser extent, video games. But those depictions of orcs stem from Tolkien's innovation, and to the progressive's credit, he describes them like this, as published in the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. The orcs are definitively stated to be corruptions of the human form seen in elves and men. They are, or were, squat, broad, flat-nosed, sallow-skinned, with wide mouths and slant eyes. In fact, degraded and repulsive versions of the, to Europeans, least lovely Mongol types. So, fair enough, Tolkien, being a man of his time, had that 1950s casual racism, and it bled into his work. The leftoids have a point there. But I don't believe that this means that orcs have to be changed, nor do I believe that they are a one-to-one stand-in for Middle-earth's Mongolian or African populations. If appealing to stereotypes is all that's needed to make something racist, then the entirety of the Black Panther movie certainly qualifies. What's more important is that orcs have become something unique and entirely of their own, despite their origins, especially if you look at derivative works like Warcraft or Elder Scrolls, or many a fantasy hentai. Of course, none of this stops the progs from endlessly publishing articles about how orcs are a species built for racial terror. Jesus, let it go, man. If you see an orc in a game and you think black guy, it's far more likely that you're the racist. A trope's origin doesn't matter. Let people enjoy fun things. Unfortunately, though, this nonsense has paved the way for Lord of the Rings to be updated for a modern audience and global standards, which means turned into a lifeless gray sludge, unoffensive to nobody but containing no actual nutritional value. February 10th, 2022, Vanity Fair. Amazon's Lord of the Rings series rises inside the Rings of Power. One show to rule them all. The first look at a billion-dollar saga set thousands of years before J.R.R. Tolkien's legendary trilogy. In other words, Amazon's doing a Lord of the Rings show and it looks like shit. Let's take a look at it. Galadriel's not the queen-like figure she was in the original movies. Now she's more of a battle princess type. I know she wasn't a queen, I'm just using an expression here. And while her armor looks okay, the sword seems kinda cheap. She's leading armies and going on adventures herself now, something that was a bit outside of her character in the original version. But it gets worse. We've also got a black dwarven queen. This image is not lore accurate at all. I don't mean by the fact that she's black. It's true that Tolkien never described the dwarves as black, but to me that's a minor thing. It's just whatever. The issue is that it explicitly removes something unique to dwarves, that female dwarves have beards. Tolkien wrote, "No man nor elf has ever seen a beardless dwarf, unless he were shaven in mockery, and would then be more like to die of shame. For the Nogrim have beards from the beginning of their lives, male and female alike." And why not? Why no bearded dwarves? You'd be doing a great thing for that representation checklist that you're desperately trying to fulfill, Amazon. Body positivity and all that. Give us the bearded dwarves.
Do female dwarves have beards? Eh?
Yes.
Yes.
No, of course they don't. They're female, aren't they?
You know, when Naomi and I sat down and watched season 2 of The Witcher, we were actually a bit surprised and then delighted that they put in bearded female dwarves in that show. It seemed like something that Hollywood would never have the balls to do, and yet they did it. It was cool. And notice in the shot how nobody in-universe makes a big deal about it. She's just there doing her thing like it's normal. That shot is for the fans to notice and react to, like we did. In case it's not obvious yet, the new Lord of the Rings show is not for fans. Next up is the Black Elf. And okay, I get it, it's a black elf. Just like the Black Dwarf, fine. We can have different skin colors of these races, I don't really care. The issue with the Black Dwarf isn't that she's black, it's that she doesn't look like a dwarf. When the characteristics of black representation collide with the accurate portrayals of lore, the lore loses, and it's the same with the Black Elf. Elves have long hair, and they're meant to look otherworldly. This looks like a regular black guy with spirit Halloween ears. There are many examples of the dark-skinned elf look in fantasy that could have been adapted. Hell, again, even hentai does it better. Probably worst of all is that this character is meant to be a gray elf, a subrace of elves that is specifically extremely pale. Actually, no. Worst of all is the fact that the Black Elf story involves him having a forbidden relationship with a white human woman, upon which he goes off to adventure, and she's left as a single mother. Man, I love it when their ham-fisted attempts at representation backfires into overt racism. It's just amazing. We have a similar problem with Elrond. Yeah, nobody can replace Agent Smith, but that's just the nature of working with real actors who age. The problem is, he looks like a human wearing plastic ears again. The clothes, the hair, it just doesn't look right. This isn't Star Trek. Elves are not just another race like the Vulcans are to humans in that universe. Elves are supposed to be wholly separate from the mortal races and should appear as such. There's other dumb stuff too, like the nomadic wanderers having giant antlers on their backs for no reason other than it looks, I was gonna say looks cool, but it's not cool. It looks different. I mean, it makes you notice it, but for all the wrong reasons. It's just dumb. These guys aren't main characters or anything, so it's just a throwaway moment where they appear for a few seconds to set the tone of the series, but it just looks really stupid. If you guys are nomadic hunters, why are you wearing giant antlers on your back that might make, say, a bear or a lion or a wolf think that you are their prey from far away? It's literally the opposite of camouflage. These scenes look genuinely awful. Even disregarding the lore stuff, the production value isn't good. Certainly not $1 billion good. It looks like a generic fantasy ripoff show that some mid-tier TV channel like FX or something would make, only for it to be forgotten about a few weeks after it drops. But because it has the Lord of the Rings name slapped on it, people will keep talking about this shit for years, like it's somehow a cultural phenomenon, branding all of its detractors as misogynists, because clearly the only reason anyone would hate it is because it got strong female leads. And when it inevitably ends, it will be remembered as another dire warning, another corpse atop a mountain of corpses of formerly beloved franchises that corpos sucked the life out of in the name of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Listen, kid, if it took this abomination for you to finally feel fucking seen, you're not actually a black person. You're fucking transparent. Just in case you thought, oh, maybe it's just the set design, maybe it's the costuming, maybe it's just the casting, maybe the script will be good. Well, part of the script was leaked. Just one little sequence, and it is fucking awful.
I don't care.
They say that you're under his spell. That you can't be trusted because you're too lonely and lovesick to know any better.
Well, you know, it won't be easy for me to drag you from this house, but I'll do it.
Why should they trust you? Trust either of us? We don't even trust each other.
I trust you.
No, you don't. You're too afraid I'll end up like father. Gone.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
I can't wait to go out tonight and get fucked! Yeah, it reads like it's out of something like a Degrassi teen drama show. And by the way, when I say the phrase when it ends, don't hold your breath, because Amazon's paid for 5 seasons of this garbage. It hasn't even come out yet, and it's $1 billion, 5 seasons on a show that looks this ass, that despite everything will probably still make them money disappointingly, all because Amazon wants to secure the Lord of the Rings brand for themselves. That's it. That's the reason. Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, died on January 16, 2020. Christopher was well known for relentlessly safeguarding, we may even say gatekeeping, the Lord of the Rings property from corrupting influences. The original movies were not perfect, but they were as good as they were, in part, because of the Tolkien estate's insistence on accuracy. On August 31st, 2017, Christopher resigned as the head of the estate, wanting to live out his remaining years in retirement. Afterward, while other Tolkien family members remained involved in the running of the estate, a new legal entity became its main solicitor, Meyer Blackburn LLC. That company has 2 partners, Stephen Andrew Meyer and Kathleen Blackburn. Oh no, another Kathleen. Both of whom were lawyers for the estate under Christopher. And by the 13th of November 2017, less than 2 months after Christopher retired, Amazon had purchased the TV rights to the property for $250 million. I'm not outlining all this to say that Meyer and Blackburn somehow stole the Tolkien estate away from the Tolkien family, and how horrendous an injustice it is or something like that. There's truly no way to know. The only thing I'm saying is, after the director of the estate became somebody who was not a member of the Tolkien family, the TV rights to the Lord of the Rings were sold to Amazon. I'm sure they made a shit ton of money on it. I'm sure the surviving Tolkiens also got their cut too. But this is what happens when control of these properties transfers from a creator to a corporation. And the entertainment media is in on it. They know what steps have to be taken next to make this go over as smoothly as possible. They know it's time to sideline the Tolkien component of Lord of the Rings in order to privilege what's currently being made. LOTR, the Rings of Power's new non-Tolkien elf and dwarf character details. Yeah, that little phrase is why we know it's shit. You know, you can actually write new lore as long as it's in line with old lore. It doesn't need to be written by Tolkien, but it has to be in the style of Tolkien. Holding up non-Tolkien as a selling point is exactly the thing that you don't want to see here as a fan. New images from the Rings of Power show us a side of Middle-earth ignored by Tolkien and Jackson. It's not ignored by Tolkien if Tolkien didn't write it. That means it doesn't exist. It's a fictional world. If the creator didn't write a thing, that doesn't mean that he ignored it. That means it was not actually created. It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. Tolkien is for everyone. It's a fictional world. It looks like what Tolkien wrote, and Tolkien is not for non-Tolkien fans. It's simple as that. It's the height of arrogance to take a property and claim that its original creator failed to spotlight a component of it by not creating it in the first place. Can we come up with a novel Tolkien never wrote and do it as the mega event series that could only happen now? Again, height of arrogance. These people are not acting like the inheritors, the stewards of the property they've been given, to organically grow a new component out of. They're acting like LOTR is an empty bottle that can be filled with whatever the holder wants to put in it, even if the liquid they choose is diarrhea. When you treat a property like that, you will rapidly find that nobody actually wants to drink it. This quote by Tolkien has been floating around ever since this series was announced. Evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. The quote was spammed on the Rings of Power's trailer so much until Amazon began to censor the phrase. So now it's just being reposted in a bunch of different languages. Nice. But here's a more important quote. Peter Jackson in 2002. There are certainly themes Tolkien felt were important. We made a promise to ourselves at the beginning of the process that we weren't going to put any of our own politics, our own messages, or our own themes into these movies. What we were trying to do was analyze what was important to Tolkien and try to honor that. In a way, we were trying to make these films for him, not for us. This is the ideal. Make the movie for people who appreciate Tolkien, not for everyone, because if it's for everyone, it's going to be shit. For something to be interesting enough to be good, those qualities that make it stand out have to also be interesting enough for it to be bad to somebody else. If it's for everyone, then it's just unexciting and bland. And although nobody's palate will be offended, nobody will actually care. In my Whoopi Goldberg video, I made an error about what Gina Carano said that got her axe from The Mandalorian. What she actually posted was this: Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them for simply being Jews. How is that any different for hating someone for their political views? And this post was enough for her to lose that Mandalorian spot. People screamed bloody murder, that she no longer deserved to represent such an honored cultural hallmark as Star Wars, for things that she said off-show on social media. Almost as if the character of Cara Dune was an office that somebody held in the institution that is Star Wars, and not an acting job in a sci-fi show. When I talked about consumption as representation, I was describing the merger of leftist politics, where representation always matters, and matters the most, with the corporate desire to position every brand as more than just entertainment, but an essential cultural phenomenon through which people filter their daily experiences through. The natural end result of this amalgamation is a quasi-religious reverence for popular properties. Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Ghostbusters, whatever. It was always this way for the mega fans of the past, sure. We always had Trekkies or Nintendrones, but this attitude has moved outside of that insular sphere and has now become the wider culture. These properties have stopped being added to organically by caring stewards and have instead become the empty jar that can be filled with the desires of whoever happens to buy it. And yet everyone expects the fans to treat the property like it's the former and not the latter. Here's an example of what I mean. When Christopher Nolan announced that Batman Begins would be a new take and not continuing the most recent movie Batman lore, people generally didn't care, partially because the last few movies sucked ass, but also because the new continuity wasn't going to take away from the total canon, but instead add to it. It wasn't demanding that this is the story now. It was offering another interpretation among many. It was the next growth on the vine, the next brick placed on the wall. It wasn't destroying everything and starting from scratch. But now that these things aren't just entertainment, but they're cultural institutions, the actors and actresses who are cast into these roles are representatives of the proper politics and need to act accordingly, unless they want to be treated like Gina Carano. It's not just that Carano said what she said, it's that she said it while inhabiting the illustrious position of Cara Dune. An equivalent fantasy failure is the new Game of Thrones show, which features a black Valyrian, a race of people who are pale-skinned with purple eyes, because why the fuck not? Also, Matt Smith looks awful, Jesus Christ. The point I'm getting at is you can look at any of the images I'm displaying on screen right now and find 100 problems with them, whether that's lore problems or quality problems. But you can't actually object to those problems because the corporations that run the show are positioning these properties as not just entertainment, but as institutions, essential components of our cultural tapestry. And because another component of that tapestry is diversity, inclusion, equity. When you criticize the shows, you're criticizing the institutions. And when you criticize the institutions, you're criticizing the politics. That's how they've set this up. It's not only that if the stewards of these properties are willing to change lore, then they're willing to change other things to shoehorn in a political message. That certainly happens, but that's surface level. What's deeper is that your objection to being fed this sludge is considered an objection to the political message that comes with it. So even if you're a leftoid who just happens to also have an eye for film quality, if you object, you're a filthy, reactionary, Trump-tard fascist. So fuck it. We all know it's going to be shit. And we all know exactly what the corpos, the media, and the progs are going to say about our objections as they march in lockstep. So I'm just going to have fun with it. After the shit show that was Santa Inc., I stopped caring if smooth brains on the internet thought it was fascism to object to having someone directly shit down the cable into your TV. The Rings of Power looks like an unmitigated disaster, and I can't wait to pirate the fuck out of it and turn it into a review for my channel, because that's all it's worth.
OMG, like, I totes don't care.
They say you're under a spell. You can't be trusted because you're too lonely and lovesick to know any better.
It, like, totes won't be easy for me to, like, drag you from this house, but I'll, like, totally do it.
Why should they trust you? Trust either of us. We don't even trust each other.
I, like, totes trust you, babe.
No, you don't. You're too afraid to let him, like, father. God.